A decrypted building stands forgotten in the woods, illuminated by the full moon's eerie glow. The wind whispers through the broken windows, children's laughter dancing down the halls. The orphanage is only a husk of what it once was, the walls charred, the curtains torn, the only residents being the souls trapped between worlds, seeking solace in the darkness. Full disclosure, this build is inspired by one of those online dress-up games. I'll link it in the description. In my defense, it comes with a cool story and I was struck with brainworms, so now this video exists. I was originally going to start with designing the landscape before I remembered, oh yeah, I'm bad at that. So I moved on to designing the shell, which is rather boxy, but you know, it's an orphanage. Orphanages are not exactly known for their exterior design. Picking out the siding was sort of difficult because a large amount of the Sims 4 build items are, you know, clean and not broken and stuff like that. So I do end up using a lot of the werewolf pack in this build just because it's the only pack with a bunch of not perfect items. At least the only one that I own. The roofing for this build was really easy though because, you know, it's a box. So small mercies, I guess. Figuring out the placement of the build, however, was annoying because the separate floors wouldn't move together, so I ended up just deleting it all and rebuilding it where I figured out that I wanted it, as well as adding on a side box to the building, you know, just to make things more interesting. Picking out the roof swatches was again kind of weird because in a dream world I would be able to add holes and stuff to the roof, but I don't think you can do that in The Sims at the present, and if you can, I don't know how to do it. So I once again ended up switching to using a werewolf swatch. I just used a werewolf swatch. There was no thing before that. Then came messing around with the roof borders because the default one is just plain white, and no outside of an abandoned building is going to end up anything close to clean. But at the same time, finding a border that didn't look too weird was, once again, really annoying. But after I figured out which border I wanted to use, it was time to put in the windows, and it was at this point I realized I would have to change the wall swatch because the windows I was using really did not go with the current one. I couldn't tell you why they don't work well together because I build solely based on vibes, but they don't, so the swatch ends up changed. After that absolute camera spaz, geez, I added in the door, which, yay. I realized that this kind of looks more like a factory than an orphanage, but it sort of gets there in the end, I promise. After adding in the door, I then outlined the building with some dirt to kind of look like charred grass, I guess. I do end up doing more with the with the landscape eventually, but after that I end up turning to the end. I cannot talk right now. I turn to the inside of the house, and I once again run into an annoyance with The Sims limitations, woo! Because there are no broken stairs, or at least there aren't any in the packs I own, so I have to cheap out on those a bit. There are some dubious looking floorboards though, which is nice. The camera sprazzes around for a bit here, which I promise is me just looking for where I could fit a bathroom in the building, which I eventually decide to build an outhouse type thing using the same swatches as I did for the main building. At this point, I run into the problem of there being no decrepit looking toilets, so I just end up using the bathroom stalls from high school years. Really dark in the outhouse anyways, it's fine. Or at least we're pretending it's fine. Going back to the horror element real quick, I really recommend you read The Girl in the Well. It's from the perspective of, like, the horror monster, and said monster kills murderers. So, you know, karma, I guess. And it's just generally really cool. This also is a different video style from what I've done in the past, so let me know what you think in the comments. I then move on to designing the kitchen, and the thing with The Sims is that even in debug, I couldn't find any burnt objects, so I just used dirty ones and piles of ashes, as well as following The Sims tradition of having burnt objects just disappear. I also added some junk just lying around, as well as some floor damage, because why not? You can't stop me. I could have added some more cool stuff, but the debug clue things from Get to Work didn't show up on the floor when I placed them, which is slightly annoying. After mostly finishing up the kitchen, I then spent a good chunk of time just scrolling through debug to see if there was anything interesting I could use. At this point, I had spent over an hour on this build, so I did take a break and didn't end up coming back to working on it until the next day. So, oops. I did download a cool puzzle game during that time though, so who cares? Work ethic? What's that? When I came back, I got to work on the upstairs, dividing the floor into separate rooms. Once again, the limitations of The Sims came into play, seeing as we don't really have any broken-looking doors, so I just ended up using arches for some of the rooms instead of, doors. Adding a railing to the staircase was also annoying because I didn't want it to be perfectly intact, but railings, auto-snap, autocomplete, whatever you want to call it, and we once again didn't really have any broken-looking indoor railings, so compromise was necessary. What was also necessary was rearranging the windows a bit, so they didn't cross over walls. At this point, you probably know what I'm about to complain about, but there aren't any dirty-looking beds. Like beds that look like they were once in good condition, but now aren't. So we once again relied on ashes and implying that there was once more objects there that burned for the bedrooms. The other side of the hall I made for infants and toddlers, because in theory the kids didn't just spawn into the orphanage as teens and children. Who knows though? They might have. You all once again get to witness camera spasms. I never really realized how much I moved the camera around when I'm building until I sped it up, but in my defense, pushing buttons is fun, and having stuff happen when you push buttons is even more fun. Anyways, you'll notice that I did, at first, just fill out the rooms like I would if I was building a functioning orphanage, before remembering, oh wait, that's not what we're building here, and removing some of them. I then once again turned to debug for ashes and broken wood pieces, among other things, after which I started looking through the wall decals, at which point I stumbled upon the werewolf wall damage, and the build slowly started turning away from the orphanage that burned down to orphanage that burned down, but there was also totally something else at play. Which does fall a bit more into the horror category, I suppose. The original reason I turned to the wall decals, however, I wasn't really able to fulfill, because I swear to you, there is a wall decal of a little crayon drawing that some little kid supposedly drew on the wall, but I could not find it. Like, I'm not entirely sure I didn't dream up its existence at this point. I did, however, eventually find some substitutes in wall decals that looked like they were drawn on instead of being stickers, but I'm still kind of disappointed I couldn't find what I was looking for. Before that, however, I participated in another session of scour debug for anything you could use, adding a bit more debris and dirt along the way. I then added some dolls to the kids' rooms, just because I personally find finding toys in the wreckage of some disaster can either be incredibly soul-wrenching if they do it like they did in Mulan, or was it Mulan 2? One of the Mulan movies, or it can be one of the most creepy things ever. I then add some more wall damage, and was going to experiment with curtains, but once again ran into the problem of there being no curtains that looked like they were once good quality but got trashed, and instead of being makeshift ones like the ones from the werewolf pack. We are now upon the time I spent looking for the kids' drawing wall decal, which I spent far too much time on. Like, I scroll through each pack I own individually, and I still don't find it. Even the ones where there was like no chance it would be in there, like Getting Famous. During this time, I do add some other wall decals, however, so I guess it evens out in the end? Maybe? I do also end up sticking a couple posters in the teen and children rooms, and sticking a rug in one of the toddlers' rooms, because why not? I then head back downstairs to set up a dining room area, once again implying that the missing items, implying using the missing items and ashes sticking them everywhere technique English. And fun fact, did you know that if you search up ashes once you've enabled debug and everything, it doesn't actually take you directly to the ashes, you have to scroll up quite a bit. After setting up the dining area, I once again add wall and floor damage everywhere. And after I'm done with that, I add a couch and beanbag chair for a living room, once again piling ashes on everything. I am nothing if not consistent. I do end up putting some debug plate setups on the tables. I think it adds more to the haunting vibe, like everyone was just going about their day normally when everything went wrong. I also add a rug to the living room area, because living room areas should have rugs, whether they're in an abandoned orphanage or not. With the rug added, I then turned to the outside, completely replacing the grass color, so just don't look at the land around the building and everything will look fine. I then redo the dirt outline around the build, and after doing that, I start sticking some trees on the lot, seeing as this is supposedly in the middle of the forest, though I do add some other shrubbery as well. That's such a weird word. Shrubbery. In addition to said shrubbery, I add a bunch of vines, ivy, whatever you call it, because I figure that abandoned buildings in the middle of forests are going to be kind of overgrown. After adding the ivy, I turn back to debug, where I find this flower vine thing that I'm able to stick in a broken window to really add to the whole overgrown effect. And after after that I stuck a couple more trees in and add some tombstones, because what's an abandoned building without some tombstones? And with that, I finished the build!